Hey, everyone. Erica L. Ayala here with Roberta Rodrigues, and we are here to talk Seattle Storm. First, mea culpa. Uh, I have to apologize. I got the times mixed up because, as Roberta and I were just talking about, I am once again on another time zone. So that's on me, folks. Blame it on me.
Yeah, that
But we're
happens.
here. We're here. We figured it out. And
And my
Roberta,
dog
who's
wants to
your
say
friend?
hi. That's Atlas. He's my baby boy. Say hi to the camera, buddy. It's his dinner time. So he wants me to give him his dinner, but we're going to wait for his mom, right? Also known as my wife.
I love it. Well, we are here. We are here to talk Seattle Storm. And at the time, Roberta, that we had originally planned this episode for a few days ago, actually, we were only guessing and predicting what was going to happen. But now we know with
We
certainty
know.
that Gabby Williams has returned to the Seattle Storm. We were just talking. She will have an introductory press conference, which I guess is more of a reintroductory press conference on Friday. But that is obviously the big news that we're going to talk about. But just a few things as we usually do. We're going to do the shoot around first because there's been a lot of news in the WNBA, including free agency, which I guess technically Gabby Williams, or I should say trade deadline, excuse me, Gabby Williams, not really kind of included in the trade deadline, but it was an interesting trade deadline. But also,
Mhm.
and we talked about this on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, but we talked about on Gotta Get Up the lawsuit that De'Arica Hamby has out against the WNBA and the Las Vegas Aces. But Joveta, since we recorded that episode with the amazing Misha Jones, there has been another wrinkle, including Becky Hammon speaking on the allegations, as well as the Aces fans, how shall we say, making their voice heard.
Nah, not making their voice heard, throwing a fit, I would say. Uh, they were, there's something that's called blind loyalty, and unfortunately that happens a lot in sports, where people put their teams and fandom ahead of everything. And what they did in Las Vegas was disrespectful to not only the Erica, but you know women who have gone people who get pregnant and go through um you know less than ideal situations in the workplace. It was disrespectful to the Erica Hamby as a mother. It was disrespectful to her as a woman of color. It was disrespectful to her as a former Aces player who helped them with their first championship and was sixth woman of the year twice, if I'm not wrong. So, where did that come from, and why do they
Yeah, and
think it
just to
was
go back,
okay?
because I want to make sure maybe not everyone knows what we're talking about. So De'Arica Hamby and the Los
Mhm.
Angeles Sparks actually played the Las Vegas Aces, and Aces fans booed De'Arica Hamby not just when she was announced or when she made a play with shooting, which happens to all players, especially in certain arenas. But and I did not get to watch this game, but my understanding is that they booed every time she touched the ball, Roberta.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. I did not watch that game. I think there were three games happening at the same time, including the Storm game. So I was watching the Storm game, but of course I was on Twitter X, um, following everything that was going on, and I saw someone commenting like, "Oh, they're booing the Erica Hemby every time she touches the ball." And at first was like, someone probably like just like one person who booed, but then like it actually happened. Like people were booing her, and my mind goes to why? What is the purpose of that? First off, it is a federal lawsuit, right? There's a lot involved in it. And are you going to invalidate what the Erica Hamby went through, even if they find that what happened was not unlawful? It doesn't mean that it was, even if it wasn't unlawful, it still doesn't mean that it wasn't right. And I feel that if you're going to stand by your team when they do that against one of the women in the WNBA, then you have to check what you're watching and the league that you're supporting, because not even the player, like, I'm pretty sure that the Aces players were not happy about what their fans were doing. It's just very disrespectful. And I saw that video of the Erica going straight to her daughter at the end and just like hugging her, and it felt like she was just pouring her whole heart like on her daughter. It just felt like she it was hard for her, you know. So
Yeah.
uh fortunately the sports world is very unfair and unkind to women. uh and we have that belief that the WNBA is a safe space for players, for fans, for front office staff. But we are seeing that a lot of what happens in the general sports industry has perpetrated the WNBA, especially as it grows. And I think this case with the Erica Hamby forces us to ask ourselves, does the WNBA want to grow and mirror the behavior of male sports leagues and teams, or do they want to carve a different, a different way, a different path? I
Yeah.
think that's an opportunity. You mentioned the Becky Hill press conference where she uh honestly she downsized she downplayed a lot of what happened to the Erica Hamby. uh and I say it's, Becky has always been my idol. I grew up and she was like my number one. I have a tattoo with her number because that's how important she was for me growing up. But the way that she's handling this, and I think there was a press conference, so she was like, "Yeah, I said something like this. I didn't mean it that way." It doesn't matter. Like, you affected someone in a way that didn't affect you. It doesn't mean that it was right. It doesn't mean that it's justifiable. All you have to do is own up to it, apologize, and do whatever you can to support that person during that time. So I think that what Becky said was a disservice, and I don't know. I don't even know uh, how much. I don't even know if she could have said anything, because that is, again, a federal lawsuit. I just think this is just a stain in the league's reputation and everything that the league has done. And I do hope that the WNBA, the Aces, do better, and I do hope that the Erica Hamby gets her justice, whatever that means.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were even surprised that Becky Hammon made comments
Mhm.
at all. To your point, it's an ongoing investigation, oftentimes, and we've seen the league not address anything directly for that reason. I think what also is interesting is that we've seen former WNBA player and WNBA champion Devereaux Peters also weigh in. And I tweeted this on the Black Rosie Media account because I think, and Devereaux says this in her thread, but a lot of people have already decided if they're quote unquote team Becky or team De'Erica. And what Misha and I were talking about on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans presented by Black Rosie Media, is that we genuinely don't have all of the facts right now. And a part of De'Erica bringing up the lawsuit again is because she feels that there was the investigation wasn't thorough enough. She said that some of the things that she alleged early on that she felt her teammates, her former teammates, could have corroborated, they were never interviewed. And so now a lot of especially what Dearica has been saying, has been in the court of quote unquote public opinion. And I think what I really appreciated what Misha was saying on Gotta Get Up, because what they were saying is that sometimes you continue and you persevere and you pursue litigation, not necessarily or not only because you want to win a lawsuit, but because what happened to you, like you were saying, Roberta, what happened to you, whether it's quote unquote illegal or not, it didn't sit right. It didn't reflect well. It didn't put you in a good mental place, and certainly not in a good work environment. And that's effectively what Dearica's lawsuit is all about. And I think it's interesting because the WNBA, I mean, we have the Democratic National Convention happening. So a lot of people are talking about Reverend Warnock and how the WNBA single-handedly flipped a Senate seat. First of all, as a political science major, I will never say that because that is false. And it's also disrespectful to the people who literally for decades have been working in that particular state to change things. But I'll save that for another podcast that doesn't exist yet. But if you want to know my political thoughts, yes, I do have them. And they are nuanced because politics is nuanced. Anyway, I think it's just interesting to see. And this is not the only thing. So not only do we have Dearica Hamby, not only do we have Devereaux Peters, and I really want people to, and I'll find the link and drop it in the show notes or in the chat, because what blew my mind, Roberta, and I don't know if you saw the full thread, but what blew my mind is that Devereaux stating, one, that she had these complaints, two, that she went through the avenues that she was told were appropriate, three, that she's heard from other players who have had issues. But the main thing that seemed like a massive blemish, which really goes into a whole nother conversation about the connectivity between the WNBA, the WNBPA, but especially the NBA, the WNBA, and effectively the WNBPA, is that if she wanted outside counsel to represent her, that she would have to get that counsel through the league.
It is, the system is definitely not built in a way that it is to help the players, by no means. It is definitely built to protect the league and to protect the team.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think it's fair to say that you can understand why an entity wants those protections, and you can't have it both ways. Like the current hockey league that we have right now, they're like, well, we're the first women's league to ever start with a collective bargaining agreement. And I'm like, that is awesome. And is the CBA any good?
Yeah.
What is that I can, you have to look at those things.
Yeah, one thing that I can say is that I can't share it broadly, but I have my own story about that. What I can say is that the way that this system is built is it doesn't set players, front office staff for success. It sets them up for failure in any type of complaint of that kind. I saw that happen, and that can be a conversation for another time. But there is a reason why I think that Dearica Hamby has. I think there's a reason why she's pursuing that on the federal level, and I think it's great that she was brave enough to relay everything that happened to the fans and to get people to feel, understand her pain. I think that a lot is gonna come out of this, even if not. For Dearica Hamby right now, for the future of the league and protection of players and front office staff. So I think that Dearica Hamby is very brave for doing that.
Yeah. And again, I think that it's important to let a due process
Hmm.
have its day and time. That being said, to your point, to Devereaux Peters' point, and I'm putting, she actually has another thread. I saw the first part of the second thread, but then I realized that it has grown since she first posted it.
Oh, I
But
haven't seen it on there.
I highly recommend you check that out. So I think overall, between Misha, Roberta, and I, what we want to say is, be mindful that these are people. I get the sense that, and I'm with you, Becky Hammon. I grew up loving Becky Hammon, and I still, that doesn't. What's happening now, in my personal opinion, doesn't take away from what Becky Hammon meant to me then, and
Yeah,
you can still hold people that you have in high regard to account. That's number
exactly.
one. I think also number two, the overall takeaway from Black Rosie Media, all of us three who've spoken on this, is that, you know, yes, we're all people, and multiple things can happen at the same time. Just because you're legally right doesn't mean that you're not wrong.
Yeah,
When it comes
exactly.
to how to
And
handle things. And again, there are things that are part of the law, that are they don't make sense. I was just watching, what is the movie that's about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, on the
I
basis
don't
of
want
sex,
to,
or something
yeah,
like that.
on the beta, yeah.
First of all, she's a phenomenal woman. You want
Oh
to talk
my
about,
God.
anyway, like, I could go on
Oh,
for days about that, but
yeah.
again, that would be another podcast. So we're just going to keep everyone posted. We don't know enough about the situation. I do think, though, I agree with you, Roberta, that this will definitely open things up. And JC saying, the system is built by the people for the people, would be a different story. And I think that's what we have to remember, people in power. And, this is going to be an interesting conversation, Roberta, because I know you're still working on a piece, but the next piece in our shoot
Yeah.
around that we want to talk about is that there is a new executive board. And something that
Hmm.
I was saying while I was in Paris, because people were really coming down on Satu's comments about prioritization, which I found very interesting on so many levels. But one of the things people were saying is, well, how come you didn't bring that up in the CBA? And I'm like, well, first of all, Satu wasn't in the league when the current CBA was ratified. That's number one. The second thing that I mentioned is that there were no international players that were not born and or represent other countries on the executive board. Now, player representatives, we can get into that, but there were no international players on the executive board. And the new executive board has been announced. And there are also no international players on the executive board right now. Satu was
Nope.
serving as an executive vice president, but she's no longer. I asked the WNBPA if we would know, like, because there was an election. The two offices that were not up for election were NECA's
Hmm.
position, because she's on a 3-year president term. So she's serving out year 2 of that. And then also the first vice president, which is Kelsey Plum. So those were not up for election or re-election. Everyone else was elected into their role, but we don't know if they ran uncontested, meaning that they ran against somebody else, or were they the only candidate. That's not information that the WNBPA puts out there. But what I did find out is that Satu Sabali, although no longer a executive vice president, will be serving on the CBA committee.
Yeah, and this is very important. I talked to NECA about prioritization on the storm. I think one of the first practices following the Olympic break, and I asked her. So every Olympics, every World Cup, this is a topic that comes up because you have international players. So she said, yeah, we do have to give international players, a seat on the table. We have to listen to them and to what they need. Definitely said that they are like going to try to accommodate as much as they can, but the representation is very important, and the fact that there are no international players in the WNBPA executive committee is a big, uh, you know, it doesn't help for the case for international players, which we have talked already,
Yeah.
how hard it is to make it in the league when you're not American, especially if you're like a non-majoritarily white and a non-English speaking country.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be interesting to see if and how this changes, because then you have players like Gabby Williams, who is a little bit of a hybrid, right? We already talked about how she has come back to the Seattle Storm. We're definitely going to talk about the Olympics, but Gabby is a hybrid in that she was raised in the United States.
Hmm.
Unlike Megan Gustafson, she's not considered, at least my understanding is, she's not considered naturalized. That's not how she represents the French team in the Olympics. It's because she has family that is from and lives in, like, direct family that is from France. And so that's how she's able to compete for Team France and has made that decision to compete for Team France. Excuse me. Whereas Megan Gustafson was effectively recruited by Spain
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
was, we saw also the point guard for Germany. I'm forgetting her last name right now. Is it
Yeah,
Peterson? Alexis Peterson, or
yeah, yeah,
well, she
and
was also recruited, so that's a
yeah.
little bit different. But you have players like Sammy Wickham or Gabby
Hmm.
Williams who are a little bit of hybrid players where
Yeah,
they have their reach is beyond just what people know from their college days or even
mm,
where they were raised in the United States. And so it's going to be curious to see how and if the WNBPA really takes on representation in earnest, or is that
yeah.
something, and I honestly don't know, and this might be a question to ask NECA or someone else. But there's a subcommittee for the CBA. I would assume there's other subcommittees, but is there an actual focus on international? Is there an international subcommittee, whether they're talking about what player recruitment looks like, what even it could look like for the WNBA to play games internationally? We've seen that they've gone to Canada. So, that is technically international. And we are going to see a WNBA expansion. Maybe this is something that the WNBPA should have on their radar if it's not
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, I remember when I was about to talk. One of the questions that I had for NICA was how high in the priority list is prioritization and uh, international players in the WNBPA talks and negotiations right now. I ended up not asking her that. I should have. That's a reminder to always ask. Anyways, with the new franchise in Toronto coming up soon, that definitely should be a priority, and that definitely should be something that the WNBPA is looking into very carefully because, the Storm played in Canada, and Nika Mio could not play because of her visa. So you have players who already have a disadvantage and are put into more disadvantage because of an extra visa or an extra authorization. So the WNBA, as it grows, it also needs look look more and give more attention to areas of the league that it hasn't like put that much light on, so international players is definitely something that needs to be looked into.
Yeah, indeed. Well, speaking of international players, let's talk about a little international competition called the Olympics.
Just a
Um,
little
just
competition, nothing
yeah,
big.
nothing big. So we've talked about Gabby, but the Seattle Storm, past and present, pretty well represented when it comes to the Olympics. We of course had Team Australia win bronze, so that meant the
Hmm.
legend herself, Lauren Jackson, alongside first-time Olympian Sammy Whitcomb, Second time Olympian Ezzy Magbagor. We also have Stephanie Talbot, I believe, had
Yeah,
a little bit of a little stretch in Seattle. Also
yeah,
was technically, sent to New York, never suited up for them, but that's a whole nother
yeah,
issue. But they take the bronze medal, and just a really
yeah.
fantastic. The medal games were really
They
good.
were so
They
good.
were
Oh
really
my
good,
god, that
and
Australia Belgium game was
I
so
know,
good.
so good. But Ezzy went absolutely bonkers in that game,
Yep.
and really carried Australia, the Opals, on her shoulders.
Yeah, 30 points, 13 rebounds, as he was in that game, what we were expecting as it should be in the Olympics.
Right.
That's the performance that we were all waiting from her. And it was a slow start. I mean, not slow, but comparing to 30 points, 13 rebounds, Sammy was kind of carrying the team in the group phase, and she was taking the lead. But Ezzy really took the lead during that final stretch. Yeah, Timo stretch. During that final stretch, and she did what we were expecting from her. She showed her maturity and her performance that game, and the elimination rounds of the Olympics helped the Australian team come out of that loop of the, they ended in eighth place last Olympics, and that's not where you expect Australia to finish. But coming out in third is going to do wonders for this national team, is going to do wonders for that federation. And they do have to they Australia does have, like, to thank Ezzy, Sammy, Steph Talbot, and Alana Smith for that amazing run.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Alana Smith had
oh,
a really good, like, sneakily good tournament. She
yeah, yeah.
honestly, I think, was one of the most consistent players for Australia. Jade
Oh yeah,
Melbourne also started to come into her own,
yeah.
and that was
Mhm.
really cool to see.
Yeah, that team, led by uh New York Liberty coach Sandy Brondello.
Yes.
Sandy is such an amazing coach. She is like top three coaches in the world for me right now in women's basketball. And the way that she was able to manage that team that has a really good mix of young and veteran talent, and those players in the middle, you had Lauren Jackson, and then you had Jade Melbourne and Isabel Borlassi. And then you had Sammy and Ezzy. It was a good mix of generations, and it was such an amazing pool of talent that they had. I was really I was it's like just had like a little concern about where Australia would end after the group phase, because in the
Yeah.
last Olympics they ended eighth because they got the US immediately in the quarterfinals. Now, FIBA has this weird system
It's
that
really weird.
ended up putting Australia in second place in the group, so they were able to avoid the US in the first round of elimination, which I think was not fair to Nigeria, because Nigeria
Not at
actually
all.
had a better first round and they beat Australia, but they
Yeah.
they took on the US on the first round, and of course the US
Yeah,
won.
and just to refine that, so, it's not necessarily the largest pool, but so they play pool or group A, B, and C, and you cannot, in the knockout stage, go head to head against someone that you played in the pool, in the group stage. So when they do the drawing, which was really weird, like, they tried to make it a show, but it was just really weird. Like, they had us in this room. We literally had to walk like 10-15 minutes just to go watch
Wow.
this, which we're like, you could have just streamed this into the media area. But anyway,
Yeah.
um It was very strange. So that's a little bit of the logistics, and I can't remember off the top of my head because honestly, after the first team was pulled, everything else pretty much
Yeah.
fell into place.
Mm-hmm.
But there was the slightest of chances that things could have been different. But the way the ball
Yeah.
bounced,
Exactly.
Australia ends up getting a more favorable route. That being
Mm-hmm.
said, I am excited to see what Nigeria is going to bring in the future.
Me too. I'm excited for what the African teams have to bring in the future. For those who don't know, the World Cup pre-qualifier is going on right now, and yeah, and you have Senegal doing a great tournament, and you had Nigeria do a great Olympic tournament. So African teams have been doing an amazing job in developing talent and finding, their best players. We these Olympics, we saw, how they did, and Brazil is in this World Cup pre-qualifier. They are, Rebecca said that Australia stressed her out. Brazil is stressing me out as usual. Always stresses me out. Rwanda, yet. The pre-qualifier, that's where it's taking place. So the Olympics are over, but international basketball is still
Ball still
going. There's
bounces.
a lot
Yeah.
going on.
Yes, indeed. So, well, congrats to Team Australia. I mean, I was already a big fan of Gabby Williams. For anyone
Oh
who's
my
watched Gotta Get
god.
Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, I legitimately almost cried just thinking about Gabby potentially going to New York because we know she's in Seattle now, but
Hmm.
the Rach bomb, right? Rachel Gallagher um, had tweeted that the 3 destinations she was considering were New York, Phoenix, and ultimately Seattle, where she ended up.
Yeah.
But she did not want to be cored. That was very crucial to her.
Hmm.
But Gabby Williams throughout the tournament, Emma Mieseman throughout the tournament, Niara Sabali in particular.
Oof.
Niara, I place her just a scotch above Satu because Niara she went into concussion protocol, so only
Oh
played
my god.
one game in
Yep.
pool play and then played the quarterfinal and still was only zero point 0.8 points off her sister's team leading
Yep.
average. That's
That
wild.
was
Um just really great competition. But oh my gosh, what Roberta, what was going through your mind when Gabby launched that ultimately 2-pointer at in the waning seconds of the gold medal match?
I was hoping that was a three. you know,
Me too.
I, I, I told my wife that, I'm in America now, but it's very hard to root for the US in an international tournament, especially basketball. Uh, and it's not that I was rooting for France, I was rooting for Gabby Williams a lot. I wanted her to have this like
All of the
major
good
Olympic
things.
moment where she hits the shot and takes the game, it would have been amazing because it would raise her status even more internationally, and in the US. But her performance that game was worth gold. Exactly, chef's kiss. uh and it was no surprise that the US took that game, but that was not easy. That game,
No.
that could have gone anyway. That could have gone
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
But Gabby Williams is Gabby Williams. Did that surprise me? No, it didn't surprise me. Was that
No.
exciting? It was very exciting.
Hell yeah. She is a super mega star in France. Like,
Yeah.
it
Oh yeah.
was beyond Marine Johannes as well. I
Mhm.
mean, between
Mhm.
Marine and Gabby, Ayayi had a fantastic
Oh my
semifinals game.
god.
Put
Yeah.
some respect on her because she
Yeah.
carried France in that semifinal, especially in the first half while they could get their bearings. It was a phenomenal tournament. I still cannot believe that I was there. I was gutted. I was like rooting for France to the point where even today, to this day, I should say, I just randomly hear the French national anthem in my head, and it's not that I
That's
know
cool.
any of the words. Actually, I thought they were saying one word, and then I realized it was another word, and I was like, "Oh, whoops!" But it's just the pride,
Yep. Yep.
I've seen and heard other national anthems. Like I went to the Winter Olympics, but there's just something when the host nation hears the anthem, the crowd
Yep.
is hype, and they're like, oh my gosh, like they even
Yeah.
started because if you saw the medal ceremony, they go through and give them the medals, and then they go through and give them like a gift. So there's this awkward pause. It's very strange in arena. I don't know if it's maybe for commercial break. I don't know. It's very strange.
They didn't
Anyway,
show us.
oh well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
another problem, but we'll have to deal with that another day. But
Yeah.
so as they're giving out, they were like these posters or something that they're giving out, and the whole crowd started singing the national anthem.
Oh,
It
that's cool.
was amazing. Not thank God her foot was on the line. I wanted that to be a 3. I knew, like I saw where she launched it and I was like, damn, that's a 2. I knew it was a 2 because I was looking at her feet.
Yeah.
But I didn't even realize that it went in until a few seconds later because I was looking at her feet and I was like, damn, her foot's on the line. And then I was like, wait, did it go in? And so immediately, because you never know. Like, how many times have you seen Roberta, whether it's to end regulation or to end the end of a quarter, have you seen someone just launch a shot and it go nowhere near
Yeah.
in?
No, we saw that
like,
shot. Yeah.
like it literally could be 50. The odds are probably lower than 50% that you even get close to the basket on that. So I'm looking at her feet, and then I'm looking at the players trying to determine what the emotion is, because I'm like, in my mind, it didn't go in. And then I realized, I was like, oh crap, that went in. And so now I'm like, wait, was her foot on the line? Even though I knew it was, like I saw it.
Exactly.
But now you're like, wait, was it? Because everyone is just like, and then I saw the US celebrate, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was
it was a crazy game. Yeah.
It was
The
a
last
great
day
game.
of the
Yeah.
Olympics, the supremacy of U.S. women's national team competition between USA and China. Listen,
Oh my
everyone was
God,
talking
the
about
medal
the medal
competition.
count. I don't.
Listen, it's by gold medal. That's I don't know when someone decided that it would count by the total amount of medals, but I think that it's whoever has more gold medals, and then
I don't know that I agree. I think that
really,
if that was the case, then why would you even give out silver and bronze? You know what I'm saying? But you give out multiple colored medals, so the team or the federation, the representation with the most medals, they do win the medal count. Now they don't win the gold medal count, but they have the most medals. I think that's fair. It's like, I mean,
yeah.
I don't know.
I think
It's
that
kind
it's
of like
kind of like
saying, it's kind of like saying, oh, this person has more quarters, even though the other person has more money overall. Like nobody says that.
I think it's about the value of a first place. It's kind of like in soccer, football, where like a victory is 3 points, a tie is 1 point, and then you have a draw is 1 point. I think I think that by gold medal is it's the best way to go, but I do understand when people are like, let's go by the count.
That's interesting that you agree with that, because I feel like that's a very American thing to only count like the most elite thing about it.
No,
Whereas
I think it's the opposite, because it's a very American thing to count by the number and the amount.
no, because the US, we don't care about anything but first, which I think is a flaw. It's very flawed. But I genuinely, whether it's gold medal count, silver medal count, bronze medal count, I just don't care. Like, I didn't realize that people cared about the medal race that much.
It's
I
a
was like, I
big
don't
thing. It's
care.
internationally, it's a big thing. Yeah, now that's the thing, like it's not like the US really relies on the total amount, but the world is like there is, gold is worth more. So it happens that the US has more medals and more gold, but it's also like, if a country has 500 people and most of them it's more likely that they're going to get medals. So the more people you have, the more chances you have of medal. But what is the value of the medal? What if a country has only 2 people and both of those people as only 2 people representing, and those 2 people get 2 golds? I think that's where they're coming from.
I don't know. All I hear is Alyssa Thomas should have been MVP, but too many second and third place votes. That's all I hear. That was a travesty. We want to talk about a travesty.
Yeah.
I appreciate the refs didn't call a foul on Stewie on that play. I have to look back at it. I don't know that she was
I didn't see a foul. No, I didn't see
it, especially not the way that game was being played. Not the way the gold medal games were played. They were like letting them play. Oh, I loved it. It was a little wild, but like I loved it.
Okay, question for you. Do you think the score was too low?
I mean, as someone who loves defense, I don't care. I loved it. I loved the chess match. I freaking loved it. And I have gone on the record saying that I would give Cheryl Reeve like a B plus, because here's the thing. And I feel like I didn't even really get to this point on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, when I was talking with Misha about this. But like, Cheryl Reeve benched DT in her final Olympics.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have anything against DT. I am very acutely aware and sometimes impressed by, but more often than not, really troubled by her ego. Like, DT's WNBA ego is ridiculous.
Oh, did you see that celebration of her like holding her neck after the 3-pointer this last game?
I did not. No.
Oh,
I did not.
That was mental.
Yeah, DT is like just like a nightmare. Like, if you are not on her side, I don't know how you exist in the world, because she is something else. DT on USAB is a little bit different, and so I felt for her a little bit more, but like, Cheryl Reeve wasn't out here to make friends, and I appreciated that. Now, the other side of that is Cheryl Reeve could not find minutes for Jewel Lloyd.
Now, that is where I think that, I think there are 2 sides to that. And I'm sorry if there's a weird noise in the background. My dog decided to have the zoomies right now.
It's all good.
So there was a game in which defense was king. And you couldn't really miss anything. You couldn't like risk not getting something in, And when you look at Jewel Lloyd's Olympic Games this year, was she the player that they could rely on for a three-pointer? It's not the kind of game where she could just take shots like she usually does.
Yeah, and I think that's a great question, because let's be honest, Jewel Lloyd all of this year, if we start from May as the start of the season, Jewel Lloyd has not been that version of Jewel Lloyd until the other night when she made that shot, and then they still lost to Atlanta. I was like, damn,
oh my god, that was yeah. So Jewel shot 27.3% from 3 during the Olympics. The US could not afford low percentages on that game, And that's not to say that Jewel Lloyd is not someone that you need for that final shot, because, for the Storm, she is. But for the US, I would give the ball to Stewie or Sabrina or Fee.
Okay, first of all, Fee got more time than she needed.
Yeah.
That period, point blank. Chelsea Gray got more time than she needed, and that was eventually corrected. Jewel, I think, could have gotten a little bit more time, but I mean a little. I mean a little bit, like
I
maybe
agree.
3-4 minutes, because this is not a knock on Jewel, because we know what she's capable of, and she does not have, if we're gonna keep it funky, she does not have the gravitas of Stewie, of even Diana Taurasi. And those two, for me, at least until going into this tournament, were the untouchables. Excuse me, also Asia Wilson. Those three were the untouchables. Jackie Young, she made a case, but this is the thing, and I didn't get into this on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, as much, and I was also on a Good Game with with Sarah Spain, and we just didn't have time to get into this. The one thing Cheryl Reeves said, every player that I spoke to said, is that Cheryl wanted this USA team to play defense. The players who were playing defense got rewarded.
Exactly. And you saw that that's exactly what the US needed. If there was no solid defense that last game, France would have won by at least 7 points. That's what I'm saying.
France damn near won that game. Who changed that game? Now, obviously, Ka Copper, and I did talk about this. Because, and again, I hosted New York Liberty podcast, so I was laser focused on Sabrina Ionescu's minutes, who also wasn't seeing much time before or in the knockout stages. But when Cheryl Reeve had Ka and Jackie getting the ball from Sabrina with a little bit of help from Plum, that was the most energetic the offense looked, I would argue, for the entire tournament. That wasn't just Asia Wilson and Stewie.
Exactly.
You cannot play that. You can't just play through Stewie and Asia. One reason is something that you said, Roberta. Asia's got an A+++ WNBA game.
Exactly. That's FIBA basketball we're talking about.
Stewie is FIBA cheat code.
She is FIBA cheat code.
That being said, you have teams, including France, Australia, Belgium, Germany, that all they do is FIBA. They FIBA the crap out of basketball. So if only Stewie is at FIBA level, because everyone, like, Asia is not exemplar in her size. Like, what, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I know people are going to try and come for me. Listen to what I'm saying. Asia Wilson's size in international play is not impressing nobody.
Yeah, look at those players from China. You can get size internationally, but FIBA is a different game. And I did say something that, I believe the US is going to struggle a lot in the next Olympic cycles, because less and less players are playing internationally. And I do understand it is very important, and it is essential that they don't have to go overseas to make money. However, an international experience is very important. So what does that mean for US basketball? Are they going to
you playing games by 20 points? By 20 points? You think USA was going to beat France in Paris in the gold medal game by 20 points. They are the best. Those were the two best defensive teams that played in the gold medal game. That's cap, as the young people would say. That's hella cap. That's hella cap. Listen, you might not like Sabrina Ionescu, but she gave significant minutes in the gold medal game, period. Now, could Jewel have done that? I believe maybe, but we don't know because Cheryl didn't put her in the game. Whether you agree with that or not, let's not make this a thing where we act like Sabrina ain't do nothing. Sabrina did what she had to do.
Yeah.
And what Sabrina did was feed Ka the ball so Ka could go on a 10-point run by herself.
Yeah. That was what Ka did was like amazing. I don't know, is the US gonna have more like international friendlies now? I do know that players are still gonna go internationally, but you have like Asia, Kelsey Plum, Sabrina, like they don't go overseas anymore. They don't have that FIBA experience anymore. And yes, the US has an edge.
To be fair, FIBA experience comes through them playing for USA basketball. Yeah. International experience would come through them playing through EuroLeague and Eurobasket, just to be clear. Also, I wanted to address this. She wanted defense and left BG on the bench. I talked about this on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. It felt like BG was struggling maybe emotionally more than was discussed, even to us who were in Paris. Everyone was asking about BG. This is me. I don't want to say speculating. It's a little more intellectual than speculating, but it's me kind of pulling loose threads and bringing them together. My take on what I saw, what I heard, what I observed in Paris and London before that, and Phoenix before that, is that, and then on the podium, is that this was extremely and understandably emotional for Brittany Griner.
Yeah.
What I also know is that during the Olympics, and we talked about this on Gotta Get Up, during the Olympics, there was a prisoner swap. And I think it was a practice, I think, right before pool play, and then there was a game the next day. And USAB PR reps made it evidently clear to those of us who are going to the practices regularly, going to the games regularly, because also tap. There were people at that gold medal game that weren't even in France while the USA was playing in pool play. Just want to put that out there. Anyway, they made it clear Brittany Griner is not speaking to media because they knew that she was going to be asked about that. So for me, this is me taking this on from what I observed. I do think when you have the size, now I said Asia Wilson's size internationally is not impressive. You know whose size is impressive internationally? Brittany Griner's.
Brittany Griner's. Yep. Exactly. That's what we're saying. They're like, Brittany Griner has the size.
To not use Brittany Griner, to me, indicated that there was a little bit of protection perhaps happening where Brittany Griner, whether she vocalized that, whether the coaching staff internalized it, whether it was a meeting of the minds, I don't know. I don't know where the percentage lies, but I think there was a little bit of care taken to not overexert BG. And quite honestly, if you're at the Olympics, you score significant baskets, you put in significant minutes, you're going to be asked to do media.
Yes.
So the less if USA could survive without that, then it felt to me like that's what they were going to do. Now that begs the question, then why even bring Brittany Griner? But that's not a Cheryl Reeve question. That's a committee question.
Yeah, and I think that, BG is an outstanding FIBA player. She has had experience in so many FIBA tournaments. She has that size advantage that does make a difference internationally. uh and when we're talking about Asia and Thai, it's just that Asia is in a whole other planet when you're talking about basketball. She can play anywhere. She was the MVP of the Olympics. She's gonna be the MVP of the WNBA. 2024 Asia is the kind of basketball that you're gonna see like probably every, I don't know when, what she's doing is out of this world, and we're not saying that like, oh, her basketball is not good enough. That's not it. It's just that we look at that game or that final against France. Asia herself, just like the Asia, was not enough to beat France. That was not enough, and that is something that needs to be considered. So, and as for BG, I can't even imagine what was going on. It was her first international trip, and it happened to also be for basketball. When she
Yeah,
was coming back from to the US and all of that
right.
happened, it was for
Yeah,
playing basketball. And when
right.
she needed to
And
show
a
up
new
for the team,
parent.
she did.
And a new parent. Yeah. And I think BG did everything that was asked of BG with regard to minutes. Now, I saw a comment, like Cheryl Reeve was trying to be different than all the other head coaches, and it almost cost the US gold. That right there is going to cost you that thinking and that mentality from the United States, broadly speaking. That, in my opinion, will cost the US gold in the next handful of Olympics.
Yeah.
You cannot continue to just play bully basketball
Yep,
because
exactly.
everyone in the international tournament is bigger,
Mhm.
faster, and stronger than they have been in the years past. Like we
Mhm.
just said, you cannot, Asia Wilson cannot dominate in the same ways that she dominates in the WNBA. One, FIBA allows a lot more contact.
Mhm.
That's number one. And two, there are post players that are her size. There's,
Mhm.
hybrid basketball
Yep.
is more post out than, I feel like I'm anyway. The point is, I'm not mad that Cheryl Reeve tried new tactics. If anything, I think she's bringing USAB to where they need to go in the future. Now,
Mhm.
did she make all of the right decisions? I don't think so. I
No,
I don't think Fee should have started. I don't think
I agree
Chelsea
with
should have
you.
started.
Yeah.
Now, I think that Fee probably got more minutes than she should have overall, collectively, and that she could have been used a little bit more resourcefully, in my
Mhm. I
opinion.
agree.
I think
Yeah.
AD should have been deployed differently in the gold medal game, especially since it was a knock 'em down defensive battle.
Yeah.
The thing that you run into with AT potentially is foul trouble, which we saw then Jackie Young get into. But I'm not mad that Cheryl tried something different. I do think the United States needs to be put on notice, and they got put on notice also in 3x3 if you want to keep it funky.
Now that's a whole other conversation. Like I have been very closely involved with 3x3 during my time at the Storm, and I just wrote a story on the new 3x3 league that's not Unrivaled. It's another one that's a FIBA league because Unrivaled is not FIBA. Uh, you know, that's the whole thing. Oh, it's basketball. Yes, it's basketball, but if you're a volleyball player, you're not gonna like you can't just pick up someone who's playing like indoor volleyball to play beach volleyball. So there's the game in general is evolving, and the ways to play the game are evolving. So it's not just pick someone from the WNBA, pick the MVP from the WNBA. Yes, Asia had a 21-point game in the final. Yes, she was the MVP. However, the way that she played, her dominance in the WNBA does not translate into FIBA.
Not
Um,
not it her game, I think I want to make this distinction. Her game absolutely translates. She will
Yeah.
still be an elite level player. And I like the word that you used, her dominance, the ratio by which, the gap
Yeah.
by which she is measured compared to other players in the WNBA versus when she plays internationally, it's not as large of a margin. And again, I think we saw that against France. So I have heard people say, oh, if Cheryl Reeve had done things differently, the United States would have won by 20. If Caitlin Clark was on the roster, the United States would have won by 20. The United
Would have
States had
lost.
17. The United States had 17 turnovers without Caitlin Clark.
Exactly. And
I'm
also
just saying.
Asia was
And listen,
only
and no, I want to finish this because I feel like we have some Caitlin Clark fans in the chat, which is great. I love it.
oh yeah.
And let's make it clear that is, we're talking about what you just said, Roberta. The difference in international play with these international teams that we're seeing that the United States, at least right now, doesn't have an answer to, is time spent
Yeah.
in camp together, in tournaments together, building chemistry. The United States effectively had 10, and I don't even think it was a full 10. They basically had 10 games to get their
Yep.
team together.
Mhm.
And they didn't, and there's still things that Cheryl Reeve, again, I think I stand by giving her like a B average. I think Misha said B minus. I'd say upwards of B plus, because it's hard to stick to your guns when everyone's telling you you're wrong.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
she's like, if we're going down fighting defensively. So was I
Yeah.
concerned about the score being low? No, because Cheryl Reeve told us this was going to be a team focused on defense. And that's
Yeah.
what the team had to do.
Exactly. And again, it's not it's not that, because when you look at, yes, Asia won best player.
Wait,
When you
we were
look at
spoiled with Maya Moore. I mean, we could
yeah.
we could end the stream on that. Like, don't even get me started. Her jersey retirement's coming up soon. She's
Oh
also
my
having
gosh.
media availability. But I mean, I think Asia's range is uncharted, if you will. Ha ha ha. I don't know that we know her full range yet, but I think this is an interesting comment. Because she has the capability of range.
Yeah.
Yes. But I feel like we talked about this last time, right? What differentiated at the time when Stewie and Asia's numbers were very close, for me, what differentiated and was like at this moment at the end of pool play, what put them over the edge would have been Stewie's 3-point shooting. The reason, though, I said Asia was the MVP is because they didn't need 3-point shooting from Stewie. That's how stacked the US was at that time. But this is an interesting point, because Asia being able to shoot a little bit further out, especially as she continues on with USAB, which she will do, I think is
100%.
going to cement her, because that's what Stewie already has.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's I kind of lost my but I was thinking about the US Germany game where eventually the US took off and won by a margin. But if the beginning of the game was not easy for the US, and they were forcing and Germany was forcing turnovers, and they were scoring off of those turnovers, what is the main issue that Caitlin Clark faces today? Turnovers.
Yes, exactly. That's not going to get
Yeah.
fixed.
And then if the US had even more turnovers, Germany would have taken a hold of that game and could have won. So
yeah, what I
no, go
will
on.
say is, what I will say is the turnovers that the US had in the tournament are not helping to make the case to have Caitlin Clark on that 2024 team. Not helping. What I think would be interesting, and I don't have the data on this, the stats on this, but my eye test tells me that the pace of the US was also a little bit of an issue. But for me, that's
Mhm.
because certain players, in my estimation, that weren't really gelling and don't help push the pace for that team. They might help with their W team, but I don't think Chelsea Gray was helping push USAB's pace. I don't think
No.
Fee at all times was helping push USAB pace. You know who helped push the pace? Kelsey Plum, Jackie Young, Ka, and yes, Sab as a
Mhm.
facilitator, not Sab the shooter. Sab
Yeah.
as a point guard. She almost convinced me that she could be a one for USAB. And I have never said that in my life. I do not like Sabrina at the one. I don't think she should be the one. Can she do it? Absolutely. But that's not her role. But if you had Sabrina with a player, perhaps like a Caitlin Clark, and then you're also integrating Ka, Jackie, Jewel,
Yeah.
Kelsey, are you crazy? Who's catching that team? Who's catching
Yeah.
that team?
Exactly. Yeah, and I do think on the defensive end, I understand that, I was honestly surprised that Sabrina did as well as she did. I would not have bet on her to have that good of a. I know that you're a New York Liberty fan. I know I was not betting on her. Um, but she did have a good tournament, and she's making, the way that Sabrina is playing this year, she is, shutting lots of mouths over there because she's doing really well. And I think she had a good, and I think that, she had a good tournament.
I'm trying to tell people don't sleep on Sab, but we're gonna keep it moving because we
Yeah.
want to talk about the Seattle Storm. Gabby Williams changes has the potential
Oof.
to
Oh,
change this team for the better. So we want to get into our third quarter, and we did this for the New York Liberty, and we want to do this for the Seattle Storm as well. We want to make some bold predictions for the Seattle Storm in the second half of the season, which has already started. And let's be honest, Roberta, the second half of the season for the Seattle Storm, a little stumble out of the gate, in my estimation.
yeah.
I was not expecting them to play the games, even their most recent win, closer than they probably wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And then losing to teams that, at least in the standings, you don't want to lose to when you're trying to stay in the top four.
Absolutely. And I remember that we had a conversation, I think, at the end of the group phase. Um and I said, I'm not worried about the Storm. I think the Storm is gonna have no problems going back. We have Indiana, we have Atlanta, and then we have who did we play last? I can't and I was like,
Washington, right?
Washington. I was like, no, it's gonna be like, it's gonna be blowouts again. I was wrong.
Me too.
I was very wrong because Indiana, and there's so much about that game. The ending.
Oh,
Um
yeah.
so I think that those first games and the way that the team stumbled against Washington, and that's kind of like one of my first prediction, which is like cloudy skies ahead. And I do think that until they get everyone back together, it's going to get better. But Noe did say in her press conference that it was hard to have the break in a moment when the team was just starting to find their rhythm and they were starting to get that dominance that you expect from a team that has Neko Gumake and as Magbegor to play 4 and 5, and they struggled with that break. Sammy, Ezzy, and Jewel joined the team the day of the travel. Basically, Indiana stayed together. The Mystic lost Jade, um,
And Aaliyah.
Julie, Leah, and Venlo. Um, so the teams that were able to maintain their core during the Olympics. I think that for this first week and the second, they're probably going to surprise some of the higher ranked teams. But I think that with the arrival of Gabby Williams, I would say the Storm can end top three in the league. Like,
Ooh. Okay, so we did talk about this before the break, and I was kind of feeling that maybe yes they could as well, because in my estimation the Seattle Storm were on an uptick while I think the Lynx were maybe plateauing a little bit. I'm not sure I'm down with that right now. But I think it's going to be interesting. I think Gabby Williams definitely changes some things. She brings
yeah,
some things obviously defensively. I think that we saw and I think it's in the chat somewhere. I'm just taking a quick look at the standings. I think we also saw that Gabby is not to be trifled with offensively. From seeing her in the Olympic tournament, I think, a la what we were talking about Asia Wilson, her game from the block out, or I guess between the block and the arc, has really evolved. I feel like her mid-range game has evolved, Gabby Williams, that she's even more
mm-hmm.
of a threat. I think
Yeah,
I've always thought about Gabby Williams not necessarily as a three-point shooter. I know she can do that, but I've always thought of her as just a body, a strong body that can just cut to the basket, crash the boards, take it to the hoop. And I think you're seeing that she also has, or I was reminded that she also has a finesse shot. So
yeah, she does.
what that means for the Seattle Storm's offense, I think is going to be really interesting. But the reason I wanted to take a look at the standings is because you have the Las Vegas Aces right now, the New York Liberty, only team to clinch. Woo woo. They
Yeah.
clinch a playoff berth, and they're in first 7-game win streak that they've continued since coming back from the break. Then you have Connecticut, just played in Boston. That was hella dope.
Oh, that was
That
amazing.
was so cool. That was so cool. And then in that 3 spot is Minnesota. So you are saying that you think Seattle can leapfrog not just Minnesota, but they'd have to leap the Aces, at least as of right now. The Aces are in that 4 spot. I think it's interesting. I think it's definitely possible. I think it's a stretch though, but maybe what happens is that the Aces and Seattle rise, and then I think it's still tough to have Connecticut slip that far. I do think
Mm.
Minnesota though could fall. And that's likely what I think is going to happen. I'm not sure Connecticut's given up that 2 spot though.
I th- I think it's gonna be in the details, and I think it's almost going to be like like a mathematics something. I do think that with Gabby Williams, I think because when we look at New York, and there's a comment here that says that the Liberty is looking like world beaters. What is it about the Liberty that makes them world beaters? Like they have depth and they have a bench that can make up for any gaps that any starter can get. When you look, I was doing some research before the pod, and you know what is the most the I don't want to say efficient, but the lineup with the highest score for the Storm? It is Ogumake, Skylar, Jewel, Ezzy, and Jordan Horston.
Okay, I'm
Together,
glad you mentioned that, because there's 2 things that I want to get to. One that you brought up and one that's in the chat. So that's the most effective lineup. Say that lineup again.
it's NECA, Skylar, Jewel, Ezzy, and Jordan. They are averaging 30.7 points per game when they have that core. The next lineup is scoring 17.6 points per game. So it is a big difference from 17.6 to 30.7.
Heck yeah. That's really interesting. So you are also predicting that NECA is gonna fully take charge from a
I
leadership
believe
perspective.
that. I believe that exactly because uh what does everyone expect? We expect Jewel to be the leading scorer of the team, right? But Jewel is not being very effective this year. Neka, on the other hand, is very consistent, has been very consistent the whole season, and her last game was so good when the Storm needed her for that win. She brought in what the Storm needed. So I think that she is the player that the Storm needed to maintain stability. I think that NECA brings the stability. You know, she is that. Uh, That's funny.
I couldn't help it. I was like, I'm putting that
Yeah,
up. Jewel
yeah.
does well if you poke her in the eye first. Oh
Oh,
man.
talking about poking the eye, that moment in the Olympics when I think DT poked Kelsey Plum's eye.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, on the bench. Friendly
Yeah,
fire.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
I
I
think yeah.
think I think what you're saying about NECA makes a lot of sense. This is just an off season for Jewel. I think
Yeah.
if you have a player like NECA, even Gabby Williams kind of take on a little bit more of that kind of go-to role. I
Hmm.
think maybe even Skylar Diggins Smith kind of
Yeah.
settling into her role, then
Hmm.
what that allows is for you to make sure that you can go to Jewel when you
Yeah.
need clinical finishing.
Exactly. Because the team relies, like, it's not like Jewel needs to score everything all the time. You know,
Not like
like
last season, no.
what did the team need from her in that almost win against Atlanta? The team needed that shot from her because that's what she does.
That was
And
such a wild shot. I loved
yeah,
it. I was
that's
like,
what
"She's
she
back.
does.
She's back."
Exactly. I was
Um,
like, oh my God. So I think that NECA is going to become like the leader of the team, as in, you know, the team, she's going to be the linking piece of everyone there. She's going to be what brings everything together. And another one of my predictions is that the Storm is going to have an improvement in the 3-point percentage, which, unlike previous years, the Storm ranks last in um, in the season in 3-point shooting. When you think of 2020, 2021, 2022, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, always on the top. But again, that's a different Seattle Storm from what we are used to. This is not Sue Bird Seattle Storm. This is not Sue Bird and Brianna Stewart and Jewel Lloyd. That's a totally different team. I asked Coach Noel Quinn, like, yes, Gabby has played on this team in this team since 2023. However, since 2022, however, this is a very different team from 2022. How do you think she's going to fit? And she said, I think she fits like a glove. She knows, you know, how Noe works. I think that these first games, you know, Seattle has Atlanta, but then there is New York Liberty, Connecticut, New York Liberty, Phoenix, and then someone else, and Vegas. There is not an easy path ahead. They really should have taken advantage of these first 5 games back. They should
yeah.
have gone 5-0, and not going 5-0 in that stretch might be what hurts them at the end, and might be what's not going to get them that third place. Uh, I do trust Gabby Williams, and I do think that centering offense on Nakao Gumake and uh, giving Jewel the ability to move around more, to find those spots that she can find, are going to be so beneficial to the Storm. And I think that NECA should be like the center of everything.
I mean, we saw your comments. We're getting to it. But we gotta, massage out the rest of the thoughts. But I mean, you talked about it. the drop off between the most efficient and effective lineup with Jordan and the next
Exactly.
lineup without Jordan is drastic, is stark.
Yeah.
So
It's and
what does Gabby coming in, if anything, in your estimation, mean for the rotation, specifically how it affects Horston?
yeah, I think that someone asked that about Jordan, and coach was like, listen, if what we have works, there's no reason to stop that. It is working with Jordan, so we're not going to jeopardize that because a player who hasn't been with us up until now, but has the potential to bring something really good. So she's like, we're gonna continue working what we have and implement Gabby Williams. So I did see that question, and I do think that Gabby Williams could end up taking more minutes than Jordan Horston eventually. I don't think she's gonna take that many more minutes from Jordan because of the time when she's joining the team. She's
Yeah.
joining at the very end. There's not a lot of games left on this year. I mean, the Storm is making the playoffs. Um, so I understand the concern, and it's funny because that's the first thing that's coming to everyone's mind. What about Jordan? What about Jordan? Noe said, like it's not because Gabby has been here before. It's working right now with Jordan, so we're going to keep doing this, and then we're going to try new things and see if they work and adapt towards that. So I know that I said that I thought that with Gabby, the Storm could go to third place, but after those first games, I think it's going to be a little harder for them. And I think that Noe is going to rely on the lineup that she has been using.
Yeah, I mean, one of your predictions was no higher than fifth.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting. So, Craig is asking, I think Jordan and Gabby are very similar players. Would you agree, Roberta? I don't know Jordan's game enough. I definitely know Gabby's game. I can see where the question comes from, but I think they could be similar, but in a very broad way. I think
Hmm.
tactile, or if you really get down to the specifics, I think
Yeah.
each one of them has specific things. But particularly for me, I know Gabby's game a lot more. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about that, Horitha.
Yeah, I think the way that Jordan Jordan's game has been very beneficial to the Storm, in which she brings a key element that this team had been missing for a while, and that's the defense, and more like in the perimeter. That's something that she brings that the Storm had been struggling with for some time. I think that Gabby is a better shooter than Jordan. I
Hmm.
think they complement each other. I think that Gabby can play a little more on the outside, on the wing, and Jordan can be pushed a little more closer to the paint. So I think that that's how they could complement each other. That's why I don't think Gabby coming in is going to be to the detriment of Jordan Horston. I think that it's going to be a process of knowing, figuring out how they're going to work together. And that's why I made that question, because when Gabby played there, like, she didn't play much with Jordan, even though Jordan was here last year, but Jordan's role was also different. So
Right.
I understand the concern. I think it's a valid concern. But I think that if by for whatever reason Novi decides to bring Gabby as a starter, she's gonna have, it's gonna be a few, like, some games ahead before that happens, because Jordan has been doing an amazing job. And there's another aspect to Noe, which is that she rewards players who show up, and Jordan has earned her minutes a lot. She has been working very hard. She has been showing up for the team. So Yeah, I think that as much as it is a concern, I think we're going to see more of Jordan than Gabby for the next games, but there's a
That
potential
makes
that Gabby
sense.
could. Yeah.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, um, thinking about the three teams that she was reported to potentially be thinking about, I think none of them were going to be an easy quote unquote solution.
Mhm.
What makes Seattle, like, if I'm Gabby, what makes Seattle maybe more promising, if all things, assuming all things are equal, which I'm not saying that they are, especially, not knowing specifically what Gabby's priorities are. Because we haven't spoken to her yet about this anyway. The familiarity makes a difference.
Mhm.
And I think that gets her a point where she knows she's coming to a team that has already been established. But I would argue that if she wants to get significant minutes, she's likely going to get those with Seattle. Now, that comes back
Yeah.
to what I think Sandy Brondello does expertly well, what Cheryl Reeve was getting a taste of having to figure out how to do. And quite honestly, where I think Noel Quinn still isn't quite proven, and that is managing so many different options.
Yes, I completely agree, and that was also asked of from that was also a question
I
in the
mean, if
latest
we're
press
being
conference.
honest, Sandy Brondello does it well, and in the fact that she does it well, whether it's Australian national team or the New York Liberty, she gets a lot of crap, and her teams get that. She's made her 12th postseason. She has never missed a postseason as a head
Yeah.
coach.
Uh, yeah.
And so Noel Quinn, that's, I think, going to be the difference maker in a bigger way than what we've seen from Noel Quinn before. The thing
Yeah.
that this reminds me of, and I feel like Seattle fans are not going to like this. I don't even like this as someone who's, grew up a New York Liberty fan. But see, the Seattle Storm, I think unfairly, got a lot of crap for bringing in Tina Charles, even though
Yeah.
Tina Charles positively impacted that team
She
in their
did.
push
She
to
did.
the postseason. Now,
Hmm.
people didn't like how it looked. People didn't like how it felt, but it got them to what I think should be an absolute WNBA instant classic semifinal matchup with
Oh
the
my
Las Vegas
god.
Aces.
Oh
And if
man,
you
that
don't
was.
believe me, just go by what Sue Bird says. Sue Bird has said in plain English, we don't get to that series with the Aces without Tina Charles.
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't by any means. Tina Charles impacted that team. You know, she is ever since Lauren Jackson. The Storm struggled to find a big presence in the paint. That had always been uh, that had always been an issue. So when they brought so they were trying to make Azzy that big presence, but she's still, when it comes to a matchup with, Asia or BG, Azzy has a big disadvantage. Um, Tina Charles brought that, head to head that the Storm needed in the paint. And now with NECA, they have what they need for that role. Um,
Mhm.
so that's why I think Tina was such an important presence. And I know that Sue Bird pushed for that to happen a lot because, if Sue Bird is pushing for something in basketball, you listen.
Yeah,
Sue Bird
probably.
knows what
Yeah.
she does.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, but and I mean, look at what Tina effectively did against Seattle. But anyway, like I said, now this is interesting, Aloysius. Now, I know you from our Gotta Get Up days. I just need to fact check here, because while Noel Quinn has been a part of the Seattle Storm while they won a championship, Noel Quinn has no championships as a head coach. While Sandy Brondello has not won a championship in her 2 seasons with the New York Liberty, she has won a championship, a couple, as a head coach. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to put that out there. It's no shade, no tea. My point is, you cannot say that Noel Quinn has the same head coaching experience that Sandy Brondello does. Period.
Very different. Yeah. So yeah, another prediction that I have, which is not really like a prediction. I forgot to put it on the notes. And that might bite me later, but I don't think Nika Mew is gonna score any points because I don't think she's gonna be played. It's
Yeah,
not
I was
because
going to ask
I
you
don't think she's gonna
earlier
be
about
played.
Nika. I was going to ask you about that.
People were, and
She's
that is
getting the Jewel treatment.
that is a beef that I have with no, not a beef, but like, the Storm has won games by a large margin, like 20 points or like more. She would keep the starters and she would not put Nika in. Like, I don't get that. And I know that there was a conversation on social media about, like, that whole situation with her and Christy Sides, and that was about Christy not pulling her starters. I don't think that was that. I think that was more like that interaction between Skylar and CC. But that was something that we talk about in the media role. Like, why isn't she putting the starters, the benching? Why isn't she playing Nika? Like, Nika is not getting, and people are like, oh, she needs to earn her minutes. Honestly, everyone has to earn their minutes, and she has put in the work. She is such a good defender. Nika deserves her minutes. I'm not a UConn.
She can switch.
It's not.
She can switch, Roberta. She can switch.
Yeah. So I'm like, it's not like I'm one of those Nika Mio fans. I'm one of those UConn fans. No, I'm a basketball fan, and I know that Nika can bring something to that team, and she deserves to get those minutes. So that for me is a big mystery. I'm gonna say that's a mystery for me as to why Nika hasn't played yet.
Yeah, I mean,
Much.
I'm gonna be honest. I agree with Craig here that she hasn't passed the eye test yet. I agree with you. And it's hard to pass that test when we really don't have a body of work.
Exactly.
And because of the visa issues, which is when I originally wanted to bring up Nika, like, we've never seen that happen, or at least not be vocalized in the WNBA. So the WNBA might want to, like, figure out, or maybe that's more of a Storm issue. I don't know. Either way, like, we had no understanding of what the crap was going on with that. But anyway, put that to the side for now. I think it's a double-edged sword, and honestly, again, this goes back to what I've been trying to vocalize regarding Cheryl and the Olympics, what I vocalize on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans, about Sandy Brondello. Noel Quinn is having her Sandy moment, right?
Yep.
Sandy Brondello will stick to something. She will take whatever flack, whatever heat, but until she feels that she has solved whatever she feels is the most pressing concern, she's not going to move on significantly enough, perhaps, in the eyes of the public. I don't know what that is right now for Noel Quinn, but there is something that she thinks she needs, and I feel like it has to do with Skylar Diggins-Smith and Jewel Lloyd. There's something that's not clicking, that she hasn't fully discovered, unearthed, whatever, and she wants to give it time, because just like we saw with the New York Liberty, whether it was to their demise or not, it's debatable. Sandy Brondello needed her starters last year to get significant minutes together. If I had to guess, Noelle Quinn wants her starting backcourt to get significant minutes together. Let's keep it funky. Even if Nika was getting more minutes, she's not going to get starter minutes right now.
No,
So,
she's not gonna get started. No,
right.
that's not even like you can't even expect her to get started minutes. But I just think it's very odd that she, when the Storm is winning, like has a blowout, like Nika is still not played. That's
Yeah, and that's where, yes, you ask those questions. This is hilarious. If JC can get minutes, Nika deserves some too. Okay.
exactly.
Well, no, because Dallas has been decimated. Dallas has been decimated with injuries. So some of JC's minutes have come, starter minutes have come because she's had to fill in. So
Yeah, and I feel like comparisons are comparisons. Some people compare the like the Kate Martin situation. She was also in a
yeah.
moment when the Aces needed her, when Chelsea was away. But even after, yeah, exactly. But the thing is that also because the WNBA has only 12 teams, of course Nika fell for second round. She's not a second round level player. It happens that in the WNBA she was, but I I don't know why. I feel like something is wrong and Nika should have a chance to play more than like 1 minute and a half every other game.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I will be in Seattle towards the end of next month, so I look forward to seeing it with my own eye test. I don't know. We can only guess, but there's something that, and I guess I just want to open up to the possibility that genuinely there might not be anything that Nika can do right now, given where Noelle Quinn and her staff feel that the Seattle Storm are. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of sometimes how the cookie crumbles. That's what the
Yeah.
role player is. It might not be anything that Nika is doing wrong. Like, it might not
Yeah.
be anything that she's doing or not doing in practice. It might just be that the team collectively needs to get some things sorted. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just putting it out there. But that being said, the valid kind of head scratches as to, okay, the game is pretty significantly decided
Yeah.
one way or another. Why doesn't Nika get minutes? I mean, I get it. I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to see how it all pans out. But I don't get the sense, at least I don't think it should be, that the Seattle Storm are trying to ice her completely, because I think there is untapped potential there. But I mean, now
Yeah.
open that up to another possibility. Is Nika the right fit for the Seattle Storm? Maybe, maybe not. Is she the right fit
That's
for the
yeah.
Seattle Storm right now?
Yeah, so that's the thing, Nika. That's something that I have asked myself. Like, is it gonna be good for Nika to stay in a team where she's not gonna play? What is it gonna be like next year? Like, again, this is a league that doesn't have lots of spots. If she doesn't play, if she doesn't show her game, that might not be that's not going to be really good for her longevity in the league. And when you look, like, both she and Kiana Williams played 13 games this season, and Kiana had more minutes than her. uh I don't know if it's because the Storm saw in Nika a potential backup PG for Skylar, but Skylar's doing really good. So um I don't know. And I do think that I do think that Noe has a very plausible reason as to why she's not playing Nika. But at the same time, what is that reason? you know?
Yeah. I mean, Craig saying in practice, you make the coach play you. That's what we saw Jackie Young do effectively
Mhm.
in her time. And he's saying, I trust the coach, the players who are good enough to play, play. I mean, again, it's not, I don't know that it's something that we can solve on a podcast here, but it is interesting to talk about. And it's going to be interesting to see how this changes, because if Nika can find a way, this is another thing, and it goes to the psychology of the game, right? If Nika can find a way, even just in small bursts, to do whatever it is going to take to get this Seattle Storm team to maintain a top 5 spot and to maybe even jump a few spots, if she can figure out what that is for, maybe not even for Noelle Quinn, but literally for the team in the minutes that she does get, maybe that's, as much as we've been talking about how maybe Noelle Quinn is approaching this, maybe we also can open up the conversation to how can Nika approach this, because you have to play your game. Sure. I mean, you are who you are as a player. And I think that we've even seen it with her defense against Caitlin Clark in, you know, the NCAA tournament. Nika is someone who will take on a challenge. And I think what could be interesting to see is if Nika starts approaching her minutes differently as well, to give what the team needs, because that's effectively what a reserve player is supposed to do. If you want to keep it funky, that's what you're supposed to do as a player coming off of the bench. You don't play. It's not always the same to play your game and to play the game that your team needs you to play. Those are things they should. It would be great if they were always the same, but they're not. We have to just be honest. They're not. I mean, look at Niara Sabali and what she was able to do for Team Germany. And we don't always get to see that for the New York Liberty. Look at what Sabrina Ionescu does for the New York Liberty this year, but that's not what she needed to do to get more minutes to play for USAB. They didn't need her shooting threes. They needed her passing the ball. She does all of that and then some for the New York Liberty, but she needed to focus on one thing, and it was her facilitation in the fourth quarter that made the difference and got her more minutes.
We'll see.
We shall see. Nika should go overseas. She can actually play, build her skills, and make a lot more money than the W can give her. I mean, we'll see. Maybe she will go overseas.
She is going. She has signed with Besiktas from Turkey.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we got into a lot of topics here, Roberta, and I think we're pretty close to solidifying the name for our Seattle Storm podcast. So we're just going to have to hold that over until next episode. But before we leave, make sure I'm going to give you a few minutes, but we're going to shut this down soon. But if you have an absolute banger of a suggestion, now's the time to get it in, because we already have our Slack channel. They've already given us some names to consider. We have some other sources on social media that have given us names. But if you have a name that you absolutely want us to consider for the podcast, make sure you put it in the chat. And speaking of the Slack channel, Black Rosie Media is really going to lean into our Slack group, because who knows, especially in an election year here in the United States, who knows what social media is going to be like. So if you want an opportunity to connect with Roberta, with me, with some of our other creators, and more specifically with sports fans who know women's sports, who know women's basketball, then it is the place for you. So I'm putting this in the chat. Join our Slack community. I'll also make sure to pin it on this video on YouTube. So if you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and do that. Yes, also liked and subscribed. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. We appreciated all of y'all. We had some good comments here. We have some Jordan Hurston fans in the house. I respect that. Aloysius is saying, is
the
it tea or the tea podcast? Isn't that taken with A&P? Tea with A&P?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That one might already be taken. Well, last chance, get those podcast suggestions in the chat, or use the link there and join us in the Slack community, and you can send those over that way. But Roberta, last thoughts as we get ready to close this out. What do you want to see from the Seattle Storm with their upcoming schedule? Like you said, they've got some pretty tough competition, but it's also a great opportunity for them to prove that they can be a top 5 team, I think.
Yeah, I think that they're gonna have to find their rhythm very soon. I do think that not having a game until Monday and being in Seattle until Monday is really gonna work on their favor. They're gonna be able to regroup and be together and bring Gabby in. I think that the Storm has everything that they need to be a top 5 team.
I love it. I love it. Oh, okay. The Starbucks podcast. We might have to see about copyright there, but also, we're open to sponsors.
Sponsorship.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just put it this way. They ain't getting that name for free. Okay. And probably neither are we. So there you go. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think you're right. So the upcoming schedule, like you mentioned, they don't play until Monday, and then they host Washington. That's when we're expecting to see Gabby Williams at Climate Pledge Arena. Then Atlanta comes in. So they've recently played these two teams. Maybe I think this Wednesday game is going to be spicy, especially how things went down in Atlanta against Atlanta. I'm looking forward to that one. And then the New York Liberty on August 30th.
Oh, that's my birthday.
Hey, happy almost birthday. And then
Virgo.
Only one day rest. They play the Connecticut Sun on the road. That's tough. You play New York at home on Friday, and then you have to go to the East Coast to play Connecticut for an afternoon Eastern time game, which is effectively what like a morning game Pacific time. That's tough, man. This schedule is not doing anybody any favors.
Yep.
We've already seen Tosh Cloud mention the schedule.
It's not easy.
Yeah, not easy. I think a team to watch out for, I don't know, Indiana, man. They came out this Olympic break looking kind of good.
It dangerous, very dangerous.
Loretta, this is a new one.
The Rainmakers, that's a good one.
The Rainmakers, we haven't seen that one. Happy birthday!
Yeah, that's cool.
Man. Something about climate and storms and weather. Yeah, we definitely have some puns on weather.
Yeah.
We definitely have some weather puns for y'all, but the Rainmakers didn't make the Double Latte podcast.
Double Latte podcast, that's good.
Ooh, Rainstorm. I don't think we've seen those two together. I do get it. I see what you did there. I love a strong crossover. I like it. I dig it. All right, we're getting some good ones. Okay. We've got now 2 tallies for the Rainmakers. Ooh. Winner, chicken dinner.
I love that.
All right,
name and tag.
I like it. Well, if you haven't gotten your suggestions, send them over in Slack. You can also just pop it in a comment on YouTube. But for Roberta Rodrigues, my name is Erica L. Ayala. Thank you for your patience today. I got my times mixed up. I'm in a totally different time zone, but all good. It's going to be a good stretch for the Seattle Storm in the coming games. So stick with us right here at Black Rosie Media, because we will be breaking it all down, including, of course, Gabby Williams' reintroduction press conference. All right, everyone, have a great night. Thanks for spending some time with us, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.